got an appointment the next day with a private gynecologist who literally took one look and diagnosed me on the spot with like a huge cervical cancer tumor. After pathology came back a couple of weeks later, they'd found it had spread to my lymph nodes. And they really wanted me to have chemo and radiation at that point. And I know, and look, anyone that has chemo and radiation, that's your journey, and it will probably help you. And I'm so glad it did. But for me, I knew it would kill me because I don't believe in it. I don't have time in my life right now to meditate for even really 20 minutes a day. Like I have to use those 20 minutes to exercise or do something else, right? At the moment. So that little tiny 15 seconds of gratitude, like right now, is my meditation. And I also ask the universe for more. You don't get unless you ask. And I always say, more of this, please. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, it's enough for me at the moment. And I'll tell you what, the universe has blessed me so many times. It's insane. My life looks totally different than it did, 5 years ago.
Before we get into the show, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, First Human, of which I am a co-founder. First Human is dedicated to extraordinary impact in the world through exceptional leadership. So if you're looking to elevate the leadership of your team or your organization, then do check us out. We also offer one-to-one coaching. So if you'd like to get coached by me or one of my extraordinarily talented fellow coaches, then head over to firsthuman.com. And with that, back to the show. And welcome to another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Hollie King, joining us from Frome in Somerset, in the offices of Sweet Bee Organics, which is a company that you founded. You're also a cancer survivor, and you healed yourself through natural means. You lead a team at Sweet Bee Organics as you're growing massively, as you was just telling me before we came on air. So you're hitting many buttons for our audience. You're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, and you also have a great deal of experience, in the healing arts in terms of your own healing and what you're bringing to the world. So it's a great pleasure to have you on the show, Hollie.
Thank you very much. It's really exciting to be here.
Exciting to be here and exciting to have you here. So we were just saying as well before you came on air that you weren't originally from Somerset. So why don't we sort of wind it back, get some of your backstory? Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? Yeah, what were some of your formative, experiences as you grew up on the other side of the pond?
Yeah, so I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and a short stint in Florida. I grew up, I was a child of divorce myself, and my parents were, my dad's a carpenter, and my mom is in the medical world, actually. She is, when I grew up, she was the head of the mammography department of a hospital. And so I grew up in kind of two houses, toing and froing, but I'd say a really supportive environment. And I was quite a good student, and I always had a love of concocting things. I think that's where this whole Sweet Bee thing came from. So my mom always talks about this memory of me being 7 and making a chocolate cake from scratch and it actually being really good. And she was surprised by that. So yeah, I kind of always loved baking and cooking and being in the kitchen, really. And
when did you have forays into entrepreneurialism? Were you selling your cakes, or when did that start to grow?
I was definitely notorious for having a bake sales or lemonade sales. I know that sounds very American, and it is. But always trying to sell something outside the front of my house. And funny enough, my children now try to sell anything that they can in front of our house, which is quite funny. But so I say there was always an entrepreneurial spirit. When I decided to go when I was deciding where to go to uni, I really wanted to go to culinary school. And my mom told me not to. She said, do it after you get your degree. And I'm actually really grateful for that decision. I think it led me down more of an entrepreneurial path because I have a degree in finance and another one in economics. So I had always had a maths brain, strangely enough. But yeah.
And 2 degrees. So you were a student for a while then?
No, so I went to the University of Missouri and I was able to get 2 degrees kind of at once. I had an extra year there. So
Okay.
yeah, it was great because finance and economics are so closely related.
Right.
I was able to get 2 degrees quite quickly.
Right. And what was your first move having got your 2 degrees?
So after I graduated, I packed my car and moved to LA, and I followed a boy there, and my university boyfriend, and I worked for
Was he an actor or something?
No, he wasn't actually. He's an engineer. He still lives
Right.
there. But I kind of followed in my mom's footpath because after she was in mammography, she then got into a medical sales role, and I watched her be really successful at that. So I then kind of ventured into a sales role, and I started at a telecommunications company selling like high-speed internet to small businesses. It was ruthless, and it was so hard, and I hated every minute of it because I had to like cold call walking around business parks. But I'd say that it gave me resilience.
I can imagine. And it's so interesting. So many entrepreneurial stories have a stint of doing cold calling. It seems to be such an important skill that you develop
Yeah.
to help in business. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think it is because I think what it teaches you is to kind of like let go of your ego and
Yeah.
really put yourself out there. And I think I believed in those T1 lines, I believed that I was doing good for those businesses. And so, I just, it gives you a bit of self-belief. And yeah, like I said, definitely a whole heap of resilience.
Right. And what was the worst kind of experience doing that then?
Oh my God. I'd say the worst experience was probably not any of the cold calling, but mainly I got a bit cheeky and a bit lazy. And my boss at the time, you would have to bring in like the stack of business cards that you collected throughout the day. And I just like reused the stack from the day before. I didn't do anything. However, I didn't realize that the boss drew a line in marker on the side of it, so she knew, and I got in big trouble. I almost lost my job, but it was really embarrassing. It taught me not to lie and do nothing.
A valuable lesson in integrity.
Exactly.
That's funny. And where did you go from there after the sales role?
I stayed in sales. I then worked for a company that was owned by Xerox because I wanted to get into medical sales, and I knew that Xerox was like had really great sales training. So I did that for a little bit, and then I got the opportunity to work for a large eye care company in New York, and I was desperate at this point to move to New York from LA. But the funny bit is, the company is in Rochester, New York, which is upstate New York. And I had no idea where that was. And I just accepted the job. And I mean, in your 20s, you just do these things. And I moved. Right. My mom drove with me from California all the way to New York with my dog in the back. And I moved to Rochester, New York, where it's like 6 hours north of New York City, not where I wanted to be. In the winter, it snows like 2 feet overnight. Wow. It's insane. But it was a great time. I was in another like training program, and everyone was young, and we were doing inside sales, calling on eye doctors. And it was fun, but once again, I hated it. I hated it. But I did it and then moved to New York City probably about a year later in another sales role, calling on orthopedic surgeons. I was selling a bone growth stimulator and working with orthopedic surgeons to help their patients regrow bone and using electromagnetic fields. Now I avoid them at all costs, which is funny. But actually, I think it was a pretty cool product that I think had a bit of a holistic background.
I was going to say, I mean, that seems to be in keeping with a lot of the thinking out there in holistic circles.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I never wanted to sell drugs. And I just think, because my mom would always say, why don't you go into pharma? It's such good money and you fit the bill. And I never wanted to do that because I've always been one to avoid taking a paracetamol or an ibuprofen or, interfering with kind of my wellness system. Always. Ever since I can really remember, I just didn't do that, even without the knowledge that I have now.
Right. And
Yeah.
so you were selling this product to help grow bones, and then presumably by this point the boyfriend was out of the picture.
Oh yeah, I think I had a new boy. Who did I have at that point? When I was selling bone growth stimulators, I think I then met my, I hadn't met my now ex-husband, but I was close to meeting him. So I was in the kind of dating scene in New York, which is ruthless in its own right. And then I went to a company, another eye care company that I kind of always wanted to get into. They were known as like the, I guess the best company to work for. And I was their Manhattan rep, which is quite an honor to be. And I
Right.
worked with eye doctors all over Manhattan. And then I met my now ex-husband, the father of my children, who is a Welshman. And I didn't know where Wales was when I met him. And
Not the only one.
yeah, and we met and lived in New York for a while. And then after we got married, we decided to move to the UK. That's how I ended up here.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah. It was time to make a move. So we moved outside of London for a bit in Maidenhead.
Mhm.
And I worked in London for it's quite a funny story. I really wanted to move to the UK and he really didn't. And he said, I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
if you can get a job and you can get them to move us and pay for your visa, then we'll go. And I said, why are you setting me a challenge like that? You know it's going to happen. And 2 weeks later, I
Oh
got a
wow.
job in sales for a software company. So it's totally different for me. And they paid for my visa. They paid for our whole move to move our whole flat from New York
Wow.
to the UK. And that was that. I moved first for a couple of months before him. And I moved in the rainiest summer that we ever had in the UK. So I guess that was about 13 years ago. It was so rainy. It was like when El Nino was sitting above the UK or whatever it is. I don't know, the jet stream.
Right.
And I remember moving and it was July and it was my birthday. And I was like, what did I do? New York City is blue sky. I could be sitting in Central Park and I'm like in a tiny little place in the UK. But I'm glad I did. I really, really like living here.
Oh wow. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. You must love it here, right? Coming from that. Yeah. It always surprises me when you find Americans living here and who stayed here. Yeah. They must love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And were you still hating your job, or are you sort of
Yeah. I
was this
hated
one
that
you
job
enjoyed?
too. And you know what's funny? I did. I hated it. I think I always had it in me to have a company, and I knew that. And what was happening in these companies and why I hated them is because I never liked the way that they did things, and I would always go, "Why are you doing it like that? It doesn't make sense." I'm I'm one of those people that will say that, especially being American in a British world. I was like, why are we taking 10 tea breaks every day, guys? Why are we doing that? It doesn't seem efficient. But my boss at software company, Zendesk, he said to me, you are really difficult to manage. And I said, oh, sorry, didn't you get rid of me? He said, no, because you're a good salesperson. He's like, but have you considered ever starting your own business? Because you're quite scary. And I said, I'm not scared. I'm literally 5'1". I'm like not scary at all. But he said, I think you should consider it at some point. And that kind of stuck with me. And I'm not sure he meant it as a compliment, but it did stick with me. And after Zendesk, I worked for Zendesk for quite a long time. I had my children whilst working there, so I had quite a lot of time off. But after that, I kind of was tasked with we had moved to more of the West Country, so Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire area. And my now ex-husband had lost his job quite a lot of times, and we had no money. I'm talking no money. We had to sell our house to just free up equity, just borrowing money. At one point, we were on benefits because we just couldn't make ends meet. He was really struggling with his job. I was trying to raise 2 small children. And I said to myself, and we were really in a very rocky place in our marriage at this point. And I said to myself, I've got to do something to make money, but I don't want to leave my kids. And that's how Sweet Bee was born. So I started making organic sun cream just for my boys because I couldn't find anything on the market that felt safe enough to put on their skin. And I was like, oh, I'll make one. So I've always been like that, making things. And my friends started using it and they're like, this is really good. You should sell it. And I said, okay. I did everything wrong when I'm talking like regulatory wise. It's okay. Everything's fine now. But I didn't know what I was doing, but I taught myself Facebook ads on YouTube. We had no money, but I had an Amex card that had a 10,000 pound limit on it. And I used that to start my company. So I started Facebook ads at £5 a day. And that first day, I made 600 pounds. And I remember calling. Yeah. And I remember
incredible.
calling. Yeah. And I remember calling my ex-husband and he was in Texas.
And this was the first ad? Because when you read about like creating ads, there's like this whole art to the right copy and the right image and you have to iterate and everything. You just struck gold on the first ad.
I think I started my company in a really sweet spot of Facebook ads. It was 2018 into 2019. And so I think I just really struck gold. I think there wasn't anything really on the market. Like, I guess there were other organic sun creams, but there just wasn't anything that was being pushed to people like that. And I strategically sold into the UK and Australia in the wintertime. And that seemed to go down a treat with Australians. So UK in the summer, Australia in the winter, and it really worked. And I just started making tons of sun cream out of my house. At that point, I started to realize, oh God, I haven't done any of the regulatory stuff. So that happened. And then about a year into it, I got diagnosed with rare and aggressive form of cervical cancer. So, and I remember my family going, are you going to stop doing the business? And I was like, no, y'all are going to come here and make sun cream. And they did. While I recovered. It was pretty amazing. So,
testament to your sales skills to drag your family across, halfway across the world to work on your business at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, my dad was like, literally, this is how committed I am to Sweet Bee Organics. Okay. I was dry. So I'll tell the cancer story in a minute, but long story short, the person that did my surgery, he was in Portsmouth and I was up in Frome. So it's like 2 hours away. It took me a long time to find the right doctor. But I had packed the whole car full of sun cream and boxes to be folded. So my dad whilst I was recovering in the hospital, was sat there folding boxes and I was telling him what to do. I mean, it was bonkers. It was a bonkers time, but I just didn't want to lose momentum. And momentum was really there at that point. And I was helping my family. And really in kind of deep in my being and knowing deep down, I knew that I needed to create something for me because I knew my marriage wasn't the right place for me. And so I knew I needed to create something that would sustain me and my children should I decide to leave, which obviously I did. So I didn't want to lose that whilst I was recovering. Yeah.
Right. And so talk us about the diagnosis. What was the moment, that you found out? How did you feel when you first heard it? Talk us through that.
Yeah. So I'll start with, I always knew that I would be tested in my dedication to my holistic way of being. I always knew there would be a test. I just knew. And so I started having symptoms probably about 6 weeks before I was diagnosed. And I asked a friend of mine, like, what are these symptoms? And she was like, no, I was still breastfeeding my youngest. And she was like, it's probably because he's slowing down on breastfeeding. She's a doula. And she's like, I'm sure you're okay. We'll get checked out, but I'm sure you're okay. And I didn't get checked out.
And just for the benefit of the listeners, what are those symptoms, if you don't mind me sharing? I just think
that's fine. So it seemed like it was almost like when I was about to give birth and I had amniotic fluid like leaking out. That's what it was like.
Right.
It was like it had the same components of amniotic fluid. So I just thought I was having a hormonal change because my son Odin at the time, he was breastfeeding a lot and then he kind of slowed down quite quickly. So my body, I thought, was just in a bit of shock from not having to feed overnight all night long.
Okay.
And so that was symptom number one. Had I Googled it, I would have known because that's a symptom. And there was a little bit of spotting in between. So, and those are symptoms of cervical cancer, but I didn't. And I didn't get checked out. I just went on my merry way, doing my thing, making my sun cream and raising my voice. And then about 6 weeks later, we were going camping and I was walking up the stairs I was holding something, walking up my stairs and I hemorrhaged. And it was a big hemorrhage. And I told my now ex-husband, he freaked out. He's not a blood person. He was like, I was like, listen, you take the boys camping. I'll meet you there. I'm going to go to A&E. And he's like, you're going to drive yourself. I'm like, yeah, I don't want all of you coming with me. I just want to go and see what's up. And I went to A&E and they said I was having a miscarriage. And I was like, well, that's impossible because I wasn't being intimate with my husband at that.
Right.
I was like, unless it's an immaculate conception here, it's impossible. And they were adamant. They're like, no, it definitely is. I'm like, it's definitely not. And they were like, well, go and see your doctor on Monday and see what they have to say. So that was my experience there, which I wasn't too happy about. But I then went camping all weekend. And on Monday, went to my GP surgery where I was misdiagnosed with fibroids. And she said that
for the ignorant like me, what's fibroids?
Sorry, they are. I'm not sure exactly the kind of makeup of them, but a lot of women get them after they have children, and they're kind of like buildup of tissue, I would say, in the uterus, and they can cause prolapse and they can cause bleeding and all those things. But she looked, and that's what she said. And oh wait. The first doctor I saw on the Monday was a very young male doctor, and I had brought my kids with me, and he wouldn't even examine me because my children were in the room. I was like, hang on, they came from there. What? So that was the first time. The second, so then I went back the next day, and this woman diagnosed me with fibroids and said I'd have to wait 6 weeks for an ultrasound. And I went home, and I knew something was wrong, and I knew it wasn't fibroids. And my now ex-husband had gotten a new job and he had private medical for us. So I then went private got an appointment the next day with a private gynecologist who literally took one look and diagnosed me on the spot with like a huge cervical cancer tumor. Huge. And he told me, and I was in shock, obviously. Being kind of diagnosed with cancer on your own in the middle of a clinic is a bit shocking. But he told me that I wouldn't cure it with herbs and magic. And I said, right. Okay.
Were you already intimating about that then?
I was going, look, is there anything holistic I can do? Like, obviously, there's going to need to be some sort of treatment plan, but is there anything I can do now? Like, obviously, I'm going to stop eating sugar and I'm going to look at my diet, And he was like, doesn't matter. Like, you're going to die unless you get chemo and radiation. And that was kind of the whole thing. But I just said, fine, you're not the right person for me. Like, this is my journey and I need to do it the way that I want to do it. And so my mom is an angel and she flew out the next day. And it's not easy to fly from St. Louis. Let's put it that way. It's like two flights. Yeah. It's a 13-hour day. It's a long slog. But she did. And we set out on this quest to find the right person, the right doctor to treat me. I needed someone that would respect what I wanted to do. And we went everywhere. Harley Street, we went, honestly, it was bonkers. We were all over the UK. And then there's always synchronicities, I think, that are just wonderful when you're going through these things. And my mom now works for a women's health company. And she called the UK rep and said, if you had cervical cancer, who would you see? And she said, I would go and see Dr. Francis Gardner. He's in Portsmouth. So we made an appointment and we sat in his room, and he just so happened to be on the board of my mom's company. It was just all so serendipitous. I have the chills every time I talk about it. And I told him what I needed from him, which was that I'm happy to have surgery, but I'm not happy to do anything else. And he said, okay. And he said, it's not protocol. And the risk of doing surgery with a tumor this large is death. And you need to wrap your head around that because it's so big that you could easily bleed out. The other risk is that I could open you up and not be able to take it out. And you need to be prepared for that. And then he examined me because he said to my mom, look, go home. We'll do the surgery in about 6 weeks. Come back then. And then he examined me and said, okay, this tumor has doubled in size. This is emergency surgery. You need to be prepared in like 5 days to do this. So that was pretty overwhelming considering I was still breastfeeding. I had to stop that like overnight. I had to, make preparations for potentially dying. It's quite to have two little boys and go, oh my God, you kind of had to say goodbye and I had to really because I just didn't want them to be left with anything. And my now 10-year-old, who was 5 at the time, he point blank asked me if I was going to die. And what do you do?
Right.
You lie? Yeah. I just said, I don't know. And that is a real, we talk about it a lot because he really remembers that time. And that little moment in his life is so poignant. It will follow him, I think, forever. That's a trauma in his life.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He said he's never been so scared ever in his whole life hearing that. And he so remembers it. So, there was a lot of emotional stuff going on and I was scared to death. But I remember my sister saying to me, do you feel like you're going to die? And I said, I really don't. I said, I think this is probably going to make me stronger than I've ever been. And she was like, then you're not going to die. And there were lots of wobblies on the way. The one thing that the doctor, Francis, I still see him. I consider him a very close friend now. And we share a lot of research, a lot of alternative research. And, he's really an important person. But the one thing he wouldn't budge on is that he needed me to have a PET scan before I had surgery. And that is where they inject you with radioactive dye to see where the cancer is. And I really didn't want to do that. Like, I think I cried more over that than actually having cancer.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyone that's going through that journey, there are going to be compromises. And I had to compromise on that in order to get the result that I really wanted, which was to not have chemo and radiation. And so, yeah, I had the surgery. And something really weird? 6 weeks before I got diagnosed, I was in a toddler group with my friends, and I was so tired because my kids are the worst. They're still not great sleepers. Although my sweet sleep product, that's why I developed it. But I was saying to a friend, God, sometimes I wish I could just be in hospital for 5 days just to get a good night's sleep. And I was in hospital 5 days. It's bonkers.
Yeah, how
But
that works.
yeah, they did the surgery and it was obviously successful, but they found later on, he thought he got it all and he was really pleased and we were all pleased. But then after pathology came back a couple of weeks later, they'd found it had spread to my lymph nodes. And they really wanted me to have chemo and radiation at that point. And that was a huge decision for me because so the side effects of having radiation on the cervical area is that it completely kills the tissue. And so at 36 years old, I was faced with never having any sexual pleasure ever again. And I wasn't prepared to do that. I just wasn't prepared to give that bit of my life up. And also, there's not a lot of research post 5 years of, because they consider you cured after 5 years when you've had chemo or radiation, or if you've just, not had cancer after been in remission for 5 years. So I am considered cured now. As of, I think it's the 9th of August. I had a really big party.
Congratulations.
But thank you. I'll never have that big of a party again. Oh my God, it was so much work. But I needed to celebrate that huge milestone for me. But there's not a lot of research post 5 years, and they couldn't tell me what the rates of living were after 5 years. And I know, and look, anyone that has chemo and radiation, that's your journey, and it will probably help you, and I'm so glad it did. But for me, I knew it would kill me because I don't believe in it, right? And I think that's and so much of the healing
part of it, isn't it?
It's all what's going on in here and in here. And I knew I needed to get the tumor out. I knew it because it was too big for me to do it on my own. But I knew at that point, I was like, right, I'm going to find someone to support me through this journey of getting it out of my lymph nodes. And I found this, I think she calls herself not a naturopathic doctor. She's actually a medical doctor, but I can't remember, but she doesn't practice at the NHS anymore. But anyway, her name's Dr. Kate James. I send probably one person a day to her now. And she is amazing. And she basically taught me everything I know now about functional mushrooms. And she and I worked together to create a plan to use these mushrooms to basically rid my body of the residual cancer that was in my lymph nodes. And we did. So I used reishi, chaga. I used lion's mane for my brain because, as you can imagine, it was screwed after an 8.5-hour surgery being under anesthesia. I used cordyceps for energy. I used turkey tail, which is an amazing mushroom for tumors. And then I used some adaptogens like astragalus root. It was amazing. And I still use them today. And we now use those exact same mushrooms to formulate our products here.
Right.
So
there's a ton there. First of all, what's an adaptogen?
Good question. An adaptogen, oh gosh. An adaptogen is just, it's a plant matter that helps your body move through something, if that makes sense. So an adaptogen is kind of like, so magic mushrooms are an adaptogen, but also regular mushrooms are an adaptogen. They move something through the system, if that makes sense. And I could have just got that totally wrong, but that's my understanding of adaptogen.
Right. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have a lived experience of their effects. So yeah, that's as good as anything, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They're like magic. And, adaptogens help boost your immune system. They help boost your brain. There's a lot of things that they do. And most plants have adaptogenic power in them. It's just that mushrooms, and mushrooms just have more, if that makes sense. They're just, they're amazing. I consider them aliens from another planet, really. I mean,
well, some people believe they are, right? Some people believe they have actually come from another planet.
The mushroom is just so amazing because not only does it have so many healing properties, it also allows trees to talk to each other. Like, there's through the mycelium, they're so amazing and they're so powerful. And yeah, it's not just me that's used them for cancer, right? So many people have, and they also make you feel really, really great if you're using them in the right way. So yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about mushrooms if we want to. At my house, there's just mushroom like photography and posters everywhere. I'm quite obsessed.
You're all in on mushrooms, as they say.
All in, yeah.
And so, what was the reaction? We talked earlier about reaction of friends and family. So you say, I'm not going to do the chemo. I found a mushroom lady. I'm going to cure myself with mushrooms. What's the reaction?
Yeah. You can imagine people thought I was mad. And I mean, okay. Some people thought I was mad. My mom was worried sick. My ex-husband my husband at the time was checked out completely. And
when you say tapped out, what do you mean?
We were at the end of our marriage, and I think, look, we're friendly now, and we co-parent really well, and we do our thing. But at the time, we were in such a dark place in our marriage. I think he was just not in love with me, and I think he just had to ignore it. And I think he also had probably a bit of a fear of parenting on his own. And so he essentially just didn't really engage, which was probably best for me because there was just so much between us at that point that I think it wouldn't have helped me. But my friends were amazing. They were like, you're going to do this. I mean, I didn't even mention that before the surgery, my friends threw a womb blessing for me because my womb was being removed. And we gathered, I think, 20 people in this amazing yurt in kind of the valleys of Bath. And they, I mean, so many things happened in that year, but everyone went around and said something and gave me words of encouragement. Everyone tied a red string around their wrist. And then my mom texted everyone right before the surgery happened, like right when it was happening, to light a candle and cut the string. And so there was this group intention setting of healing. And then after the surgery, I don't think we had to cook a meal for probably 6 weeks. There was always a meal that showed up at my door. There, wow. It was just, they were there sitting with me, chatting with me. So I felt, and this is me, 5 years ago, I'm not from here, but I had this beautiful network of women that we still, I mean, we're all so close still, and we still do our women's circle in that same yurt. And they were just so supportive. And so I think I really felt held, and I knew I could do it. And I think they all still, they're like, we do it the same way. Like, they really believe in those. I think most of my friends are very holistically minded. So I'm very lucky in that space. But half the camp thought I was crazy. The other half the camp was like, you're crazy for doing it any other way. Like, you're doing it the right way because you're doing it your way. Yeah.
Right. And then, and I say that there's this twang of jealousy, right? That's something that women do experience, right? And I think it's very rare for men to experience anything like that in their entire lives, right?
I
Um,
think you're
yeah.
right. And I think I talk a lot about that with my partner, and we talk about that, about how I have a real, I mean, this is such a sidetrack, but I have a real passion for men, and I feel for men because I feel that they don't, this is a broad generalization, but I feel that a lot of men are very, very lost at the moment, and they don't know who to be, and they feel guilty for being masculine. And then they just don't know who to be, but that's kind of their natural state of being. But now it's been so pushed out of men, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. I think we need polarity in this world, and and the how do I say this? The masses are, and the media are trying to get rid of polarity to make everyone the same, and I don't think that's a good thing. And that's probably very controversial, but that's my opinion.
No, well, no, I agree with you, and yeah, I think there has been a denigration of men's spaces and yeah, masculinity in general, and yeah, but yeah, healthy
Yeah,
masculinity exists. It is important for I believe for men to find community and find brothership and camaraderie with other men. And yeah, I think you're right. I think right now at
yeah,
this phase, that's not there for men as much as it has been in the past. To our detriment, and
yeah,
we see it in the stats and the suicide stats and the depression stats and all the rest of it. I mean, women also suffering right from mental health crisis. It's like both sexes are, but it's certainly
yeah.
true that men are, and
But
maybe to a slightly higher degree in some aspect.
and are we
Yeah.
both suffering from mental health crisis because we don't know where our men are? Like being a woman, and
Mm,
like I think
yeah.
sometimes, yeah, I think we need to. Yeah, I think because you then see these men's circles coming, up and all of that. But are they doing things because they're mimicking what women are doing now? Like I feel like men need to do it their own way. Like they just need to go and do it their own way, and then they'll feel better. I guess I'm raising two boys, right? And also then my partner has a son as well and a daughter, so it's really interesting to see. And I just don't want them to feel like they need to be anybody but themselves. Like they don't need
Right.
to. They need to, if they're really masculine, to be it, And I think that we need those men. We need them. We need powerful men.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, total sidetrack.
No, no, it's important, and it comes right to the heart of healing and knowing who we are
Yeah,
and expressing ourselves authentically in the world. Because to the extent we're not doing that, is the extent we're creating disease in the body. So yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
it's
If
on
it's
point.
creating dis-ease, then it's
Yeah,
going to be a disease, right? So yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay, so it sounds to me like the mushrooms played an important role, but so did the intention setting, the support network,
Yeah.
you know, coming into community with these other women
Yeah.
were all really important factors.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just think having a goal as well. So whilst I was healing from my surgery and now trying to figure out how to get rid of the residual cancer, I decided that should I survive this, I'm going to expand my company into other natural healing modalities. So that was the goal. And so I spent a lot of time dreaming up what that would look like whilst I was healing. And really the moment I could kind of get up and walk, which it was a full 8 weeks after having that surgery. And I didn't think it would be. Like I'm quite fit and healthy. I've always worked out. I'm quite active, but it was a full 8 weeks. And to have to surrender to that, being in bed when you are a very active person, was also a learning curve and resilience again, I mean,
Okay.
and having to be able to accept, I guess, having to be able to accept um, help, that was not easy for me to accept help, but I'm pretty good at it now.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're flat on your back in a hospital bed, you got no choice.
Yeah.
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 I could
Yeah.
yeah. Just I broke my leg when I was a kid, and I remember something similar. I was only in hospital for a few days, I think, but I was beside myself within like 48 hours. I couldn't get up and walk. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
relate
It's
to that.
hard. I know. And I
Yeah.
couldn't walk either because my stomach muscles were completely, torn. And it was just such a painful recovery. But I then decided to make my second product just literally the moment I could get up. And that was our Elderberry Elixir. It was called Winter Wellness, but we've rebranded it and it's called Elderberry Elixir now. And that was a, well, as it says on the tin, an elderberry elixir to help boost immunity.
Awesome.
And so we were kind of selling these products, a winter product, an autumn and winter product of elderberry and sun cream in the summer. And it just was doing so well. It was ticking along nicely. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. And in the background, I was formulating products with mushrooms. And I think we released after that our Sacred Roots product, which we still have, which is a hot chocolate with reishi and chaga mushrooms in it. Once again, to boost immunity. And also, it tastes really, really good. Everybody likes hot chocolate.
I saw that on the website. It had coconut sugar. I thought, yummy.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I mean, my boys, they have it most days after school, especially once it gets a little bit chilly. And if I can get my children, because as you can imagine, with the mom that eats organic and is in the holistic world, they are rebelling massively against it, right? They want to drink.
They're like, give me my McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't gone that far with them, but they're always asking. But I'm telling you what, once again, it's another surrender project. I've had to learn as they get a bit older to let go of some things and not be so crazy about what goes into their body because it'll just create the actual opposite effect, right? So I now have to really relax. And when I come home with a bag of sweets for them, they always go, "What's wrong?" But I'm trying to do it more. And I think my partner, he's really good at teaching me balance. Because I'm quite an extreme person. And I think it's really nice to have someone who goes, come on, let them just have the sweets. They're not going to die. Yeah, exactly. But like they started a new school and now they have school lunch because they always had packed lunch before. And I'm like, I'm really struggling with them not eating organic food every single day. I'm going to talk to the head and get this changed. And Warren, my partner's like, would you just not on the first week of their brand new school? Like, give it some time.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. But the journey of the business, we were trucking along really nicely. And then I created Sweet Sleep. And that's kind of when the business blew up. And I created it for my son, Odin, who was just not sleeping at all. And he had restless legs as like a 3-year-old. And I got a magnesium spray, which is, I don't know if you've ever tried a magnesium spray.
I do use magnesium spray. I have done for a long time. I noticed sometimes occasionally I'd get like cramps in my joints, and I read somewhere that magnesium was good for that. And I literally haven't had a cramp since. Well, apart from like a week when I realized I'd been forgetting to do the magnesium.
Exactly, right.
And then I'm like, okay, back to the magnesium.
Yeah. But a spray for a child is quite tricky because it's very itchy and very, very tingly. So I put it on his skin and he was like freaking out. And so I had to take it off of him. And I was like, I wonder if I mix the butters and oils that I use in our sun cream with a magnesium spray. So I created my own magnesium spray and then I mixed it with basically exactly what we still do here now. And we make like thousands of jars a day. Our butter, so like coconut butter, shea butter, and all these butters. And I made this cream and I put it on his legs and feet that night. And he slept through the night for the first time in like 2.5, 3 years. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the next product at Sweet Bee. And it was. And someone in the menopause world got a hold of it. And for anybody that isn't menopausal or perimenopausal, you don't sleep. and there's a lot we said about not having enough magnesium when you're going through that stage. Anyway, and it just blew up from there. And we sell, thousands of jars a day of Sweet Sleep. And it's an amazing product. And I do not go one day without using it. Like, If I forget before I go to bed, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I didn't put sweet sleep on. And I put it on my kids. My partner's a lawyer, and when he met me, I said, "Oh, I run this company." I said, "This product like really helps you sleep." And he was so prepared to be like, "I'm gonna have to pretend that this product is amazing," right? And because he's quite analytical and like,
Yeah.
and he used it, and he was like, "Oh my god!" Because as a lawyer, the cogs are always turning, and he really struggles with it. He like slept through, and he was like, I actually can't believe how effective this really is." So I sold him on it at least. But yeah, it's
that sealed the deal. He's like, right, that's it.
yeah. Now
I've
he's
got to
like,
stay with you just for the sleep product.
now he's like mixing. I mean, he's taken it to a whole new level. Like he's definitely on the wellness train now. He's like mixing, like, I don't know if you've ever used Shilajit, like it's like a resin.
Yeah, I do. I've put
Use
that
it,
into my
right?
routine recently. Yeah, I mean, it tastes
Yeah,
absolutely disgusting, but I do
it's
use it.
horrible. But he's like mixing that into smoothies with ashwagandha, and he's all, basically our cupboard is like a medicine cabinet, and he's just mixed. I mean, he makes the worst smoothies ever, but he drinks them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. You've fully indoctrinated him. That sounds great. Um,
Totally.
yeah. So I had a couple of questions going back to the cancer story. And by the way, thank you for sharing so candidly
Of course.
about the whole thing. So the first question is, and it's a somewhat loaded question, and maybe you'll figure out why. But why do you think you got cervical cancer?
Great question. I was under an immense amount of stress. I think stress is so, what's the word? A huge catalyst for disease. And I was under financial stress. I was under relationship stress. I wasn't sleeping because I was under stress, and I also had 2 small children. And I think that is number one. And I also think that, I think that's probably the main reason. I think stress will do that to you. And because it didn't make sense, like a lot of cervical cancer comes from HPV, and that's a sexually transmitted disease. And I was in a, monogamous relationship, and it had been for quite a long time at that point. And so it was very confusing to me that how that would develop and how it would grow, how it grew so fast. It's all stress, right? And then being diagnosed creates even more stress, which is not what you need. So I think, stress was definitely the catalyst for it.
And why particularly do you think you developed cancer in the cervix?
I think that I had a low self-worth. I think I felt not good enough. I think that, turned up a notch when my marriage was failing, and I just really didn't want to let it go, but I knew I needed to. And I was really, really scared. And also I wasn't being intimate with him. And so I didn't have like the love there. I don't know how else to say it. Do you know what I mean? All these things, like having a loving and supportive relationship, should you choose to be in a relationship, is so important. And if it's causing the opposite effect, then I do believe that that's when tumors can develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and my motivation for asking this question was that we recently had a guest on the show, Brendan Bozarth, who is a practitioner in German new medicine. Are you familiar with that?
I have,
No.
yes, and I
Okay.
thought it was fascinating, and I will definitely listen to that episode because I dipped a toe in basically. But yes,
Yeah.
I mean,
But the premise of German new medicine is disease in general, but uh, including cancers, um, arise in specific parts of the body as a result of what they describe as psychological conflicts. So there's a particular psychological tension that you're experiencing, which triggers a atavistic, part of our evolutionary history. It triggers a biological process um, that creates, what we now call as a cancer.
yeah,
But from their perspective, is actually a strengthening of a certain part of the body
yeah,
to help you to deal with this perceived, threat or requirement in your environment.
Exactly.
So it's actually it's your body's wisdom being engaged to create a different effect in the body, and we pathologize it as a problem and something to excise from the body and so on. Whereas perhaps it's actually a beneficial biological process that's a response
Yeah.
to something we're experiencing in our environment, which of course turns the whole modern conception of cancer on its head. But it's it's a fascinating perspective.
Totally fascinating. And I mean, taking that a step further, like I didn't feel safe in my relationship. And so I literally put a blocker. I mean, if
Right.
you think about it,
Yeah.
right? Just it's absolutely
Yeah.
fascinating. And you're right. I mean, our environment is so important. It's just so important. And I now um I don't compromise. I don't compromise on my environment. Like I just don't. If I'm not happy in a situation, I leave. And that took 3 years of therapy to get there, right? Like a lot.
Mm.
Because I was always like a people pleaser. I want to make people happy. I don't do that anymore. Like I'm like, if I'm not happy here, and I mean, I don't have to be always elatedly happy, right? Like I'm still dealing with day-to-day life all the time and things are coming my way. But like if I'm in a situation where it doesn't feel easeful, I'm like, I'm out. I'm not doing this, and it works. I mean, I keep harmony in my body as best I can. I rarely get ill. If I do, my body spikes a 42-degree fever and it's done in 24 hours. And my children are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I've also done a huge amount of therapy, and I'm also very healthy, and I think that's a big part of it. Yes, of course, I do as much as possible have a healthy diet, but I think far more important for me is my psychological health, and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some other question then is, why do certain people take very strict dietary approach? Uh, I'm thinking of Steve Jobs as a famous example, right? Who went into smoothies and juicing when he was diagnosed. A friend of mine got on the Gershon diet, which is pure, vegetable juicing. Both died of cancer on extremely strict, organic, healthy diets. Why does that happen?
I think one, the body goes into shock. I think that our body doesn't necessarily need vegetable juice to survive. I think that I did it too for a little bit and felt awful. So interestingly enough, I went vegan for a year before I got diagnosed. Is there a correlation? I think so. I remember my doctor going, "You have to like eat meat," and I was like, "Fine." And I think the body needs meat. Like once again, maybe controversial, but in my opinion, having these really strict, stringent juices, the juice turns straight to sugar in your body, and vegetables have lectins in them, right? They're spike proteins, and they literally put holes in our gut, which then causes leaky gut, which we know everything stems from the gut now. Like we just know that now. And so I think for me personally, extremism like that is probably not ideal. Now, eating 100% organic probably is the smartest thing you can do. So I think sourcing meat that doesn't have antibiotics in it and doesn't eat pesticide sprayed grass is important. I mean, God, I could talk about diet all day long because I have a real theory about diet. I think we need good pasture raised organic meat and some fruit every once in a while and high fat. And if you need the vegetables, fine, but I don't think it should be the primary source of your nutrition. Yeah.
And so maybe I'll ask a slightly different question then. So do you think it's possible for somebody to cure themselves from cancer just with diet?
Yes.
Oh, you
I
do?
think
Okay.
I do. I do. I think that absolutely it's all in the belief system. And I think that yeah, I do. I think as long as you're eating the right things for your body, and I really think that if you're limiting sugars just not great for us. Even fruit should be eaten in moderation, this is my opinion. Because it's just going to turn to sugar it's going to go straight to your bloodstream. And when you look at a fruit tree, there's not so much of it everywhere. There's not fruit everywhere, is there? And I believe in eating in that way. So I do think people can cure themselves with diet, and people have done it. So there's proof.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, because I would question that in that, I hear from your story, there was a very strong healing intention. You got a lot of support from your community. There were other factors at play there beyond just your diet choices. And I mean, and maybe it's true. Maybe some people can just simply change the diet, and that's enough for them, and that provides the body with enough support without doing anything sort of psychological or.
But isn't that? Yeah, but isn't that still psychological? Like, I think if they believe that they can cure themselves with their diet alone, they will. Like,
right.
if they fully believe it, right? So I guess that's my answer. The yes comes from that. Like, if they fully believe that doing IV turmeric, and people do this, right, is going to cure you, it will. Because what really, really cures us is our thoughts. And I try and teach this to my kids, like manifestation. And it's really hard to teach them, like, if you really believe it, it will happen, because it's more than that. It's like knowing it will happen. And so then they'll go, I know it's going to rain sweets today. I'm like, yeah, but your body knows that's impossible, right? So that's not actually going to, because you don't have this deep, deep knowing. It's a really hard concept to teach.
You're right.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating. So for you, it's about developing a deep knowing that you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you will heal.
Exactly.
And then the diet becomes supportive of that, right? If it's like, if I make these changes, I have this deep knowing that okay.
That's it. And it's the doing, that's the knowing and the doing, I think, that work, right? So, people go, oh, but I've been really thinking that. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing it. You've got to do it, And so the action, like, okay, this mushroom is going to heal me. I have a deep knowing of that. So now I'm going to take them.
Okay.
And it's interesting with mushrooms or any of this stuff. Like, right now, I'm in a part of my life where I've always had quite a strict diet. I eat meat. I eat a little bit of vegetables. I eat high-fat diet. I drink raw milk. I do all these things. And right now, I'm in a funny little place. I was just saying to my partner this morning, I'm like, I am in a place where I just want to, like, indulge. And I'm doing that. Like, listen, I hadn't drank alcohol for a really long time. And now I'm having a little bit, because I can't have zero tolerance, but I'm even having just a little bit. And I know all the research says it's horrendous for your brain and all of that. But I also believe in giving yourself what you really want in that time. And so I'm just, like, being a little bit indulgent at the moment. And I feel really happy for that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's about, I feel really happy, right? If that enables you to assert to yourself, I feel really happy, then that's the most powerful.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's when you get on the other side of alcohol and you wake up and you feel like, oh, I'm an asshole and I shouldn't have said that. And if your alcohol has put you into that mindset,
it's never going to work.
You should be taking the alcohol, right? Not because the alcohol per se, but because of the mind space it's put you in.
Exactly. And, like, when I choose to have a drink, and like I said, it's still very rare, but I got on this kick with these Palomas. I don't know if you've ever had one, but it's just like tequila, and they were playing I don't even know what it's, Phil Collins. But yeah, so
favorite.
Yeah, so I know it's good. It was the big drum solo where he does that.
Right.
I totally lost my train of thought, but
the Palomas when you're drinking, yeah.
So yeah, I every once in a while I'll have one, and I choose organic tequila and organic grapefruit juice, but I enjoy it, and I think that that's important too. I was so regimented and strict, and I'm not sure I was really happy then. Like, I never ate a carb ever, and now I'm like, no, I want some mashed potatoes, or I want, like, if I eat a cottage pie, I really want to enjoy that or make a cottage pie, I want to enjoy that with my kids. Right. I'm not guilty about it. So
Yeah.
that's just, I could literally talk about diet forever because it just think
No, but
there's,
you're saying the right things about diet. Like
yeah,
yeah, I think this is where in the holistic health services, health circles, you get caught up on the
yeah,
nature of the food as opposed to what we're talking about now. It's about the mind state.
yeah, it really, really is. Sorry, I'm so passionate. I'm getting hot. I had to take off my cardigan.
Um, Great. Well, no, and I thank you for going back there. Because I do
Yeah,
think it's important. And certainly for the skeptics there, and people can, because I can imagine people listening. Well, can you really just take some mushrooms and heal yourself? I think hopefully what we're doing here is we're exploring that it's holistic healing is multifaceted, and
yeah,
yes, what we ingest is part of it, but it's
yeah.
only one part of it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so important to get your mind straight when you're healing. It's just, that is just so important. And just feeling happiness and gratitude, I think, are the biggest things. I mean, and when you feel like, that's one thing that I try and do every day is like wake up in the morning. And I know it sounds way more like I'm not this amazing, like natural person that spends all the time in the garden and does like all this woo woo stuff. Cause I think sometimes people think that of me. They're like, oh, your life. I'm like, no, my life is crazy. I am rushing around getting kids to school, trying to make food for myself and trying to do everything. But that one little moment in the morning as the sun's rising, I just try and take a moment and just feel a sense of gratitude because I think that's so powerful. And I also ask the universe for more. Like I think if you don't get,
Yeah,
if you don't get unless you ask. And I always say, more
yeah.
please, more of this, please. Thank you. Thank you.
I love that. More
Yeah.
of this, please. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right? You don't
And
ask,
and were
you
you and were you doing that? Was that practice there for you, even in the height of the issues of the cancer?
um yeah, I was. I had to get my head straight. I think, but I wasn't doing it before I was diagnosed, which is interesting. I'd lost
Mm,
my practice.
interesting.
And I don't have time in my life right now to meditate for even really 20 minutes a day. Like I have to use those 20 minutes to exercise or do something else, right? At the moment. So that little tiny 15 seconds of gratitude, like right now is my meditation,
Right.
you know, and, and yeah, it's enough for me at the moment. And I'll tell you what, the universe has blessed me so many times. It's insane. My life looks totally different than it did, 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
extraordinary story from, on benefits to running what you're running now.
What? Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Great. So yeah, we kind of left off, you've got this sweet sleep product, you've got the magnesium that you can put onto kids. Yeah, so sort of bring me up to speed now to where Sweet Bee Organics is at. Like what's this, if you don't mind sharing, the revenue, the size of the team, where are you at now?
Yeah. So 3 years ago, we decided to make a carbon copy of what we do here in the UK, in the US. So I put that in my hometown. So we now have a manufacturing site here in the UK and in the US. We're a team of about 50 people now,
Wow.
growing, hiring as well. And we manufacture here in the UK and in the US. So we make all of our own products. Once again, that goes back to integrity. Like early days when it started taking off, it could have been really easy for me to find a contract manufacturer and then make all the products and I do the marketing and all the, and have a small team. But there were always compromises, like always price, quality. And I was like, no, we're just going to build a factory. And literally, that's what we did. And I have the most amazing team. And a lot of them have been with me. I mean, Caroline has been with me since she was packing boxes in my son's room in 2019, and she's still here. And,
Awesome.
and that's it. It's creating an environment where people feel valued, hopefully, and wanted and needed, and also hopefully part of something bigger than just my dream, right? Like I
Yeah.
hope they see that these products are being made because we're really trying to help people with whatever ailment they have. Like, we try and create something for everyone really here.
Well,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so as a leader, Holly, then what's worked for you, do you think, in your own leadership style, leadership orientation in growing Sweet Bee to the size it is now?
Yeah. As a leader, and that word still kind of gets me. I think I have imposter syndrome a lot of the time. And I'm not sure my leadership style is great or right. I don't really know. I think this whole thing that has been created out of like gut instinct. And I really, really, really listen to my gut, like always when I make decisions. Um, in leadership, I just want my team to realize that I'm just a human as well. And we're all trying to get by and do what's best for us and our families. And I really believe in listening to them. But lately, what I've tried to do is become more of a leader, I guess. Like, instead of it being so flat, I've had to create I can never say that word, structure,
Yeah.
which was hard for me, but I brought in an amazing woman. She's our COO. She's called Nikki Mickelson, or Mitchelson, I think it says it. Anyway, and she's amazing. And she came in and was like, look, we need some structure because everybody's reporting to you and it's crazy. And nobody really knows like where they are because everybody was kind of doing everything. And so we've really created a solid structure to just give the team, I think, better boundaries so they know really what they're doing. And I feel that our team is really happy, and we're in massive hyper growth at the moment, like massive hyper growth, which is so fun and so crazy. It's crazy. But I just think that I don't know. I hope they see me as more of a visionary than a leader. Like, I think that bringing in Nikki as a COO, she's kind of taking a leadership role when it comes to day-to-day management. I've actually
Okay.
just hired my partner as our chief strategy officer and our general counsel. And so he's really good at kind of leading really large teams because he was a partner in a really big law firm for a long time. And it'll be interesting to work with my partner. He's always helped me with everything. He's like a
Another test.
trusted. Yeah, I mean, he's been a trusted advisor for me for a long time. So it was a natural step. But yeah, I
Maybe he'll
think
become your product guy with all of his concoctions.
I know. I try to get him on like our ads and stuff like that, and he's always like, "No way." But I guess that's a long-winded answer to your question. But the short answer is that um, my shortcomings, I find the right person to do those, right? So, and that's learned, and that's 3 years of therapy. But it is like
Okay.
I was doing everything, and like it took me everything to let go of doing customer service. And then I hired a customer service person and it changed my life. I wasn't like up till 4 a.m. responding to emails, right? And so now, and I get teased a lot about this from my partner. He's like, you have somebody for everything. Like, oh, I have that person for that. I have that. I've become a master delegator. That's my leadership
Right.
style. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And fascinating you talk about therapy because I've been writing a bunch of posts on LinkedIn recently, because I'm in the space of like high performance coaching. We coach leaders in different businesses, and I'm saying like the number one thing you could do if you've got childhood issues to improve your leadership is do therapy, right? And well, hang on,
Totally.
you're supposed to be a coach, and now you're telling me I should be doing therapy. And I'm also saying like coaches should engage in therapeutic conversations. Like don't always think there needs to be this hard line between coach and therapist. And so in that context, it's music to my ears that you're linking your therapy with your
Yeah.
experience as a leader. So talk more about that. Like how has therapy helped you as a leader?
I like that question because what it's done is it helped me kind of get my ego in check, right? Like, there's a lot of ego around being a CEO and all of that. And it's not ideal. It's only going to harm us if we just keep following our ego and making sure we're the biggest and the best. Because at the end of the day, like, I can't do all of this. And I don't, at the end of the day, I'm a creator. Like, I like to formulate and create. So why am I trying to engage in something that isn't actually suiting me? And yes, I love being the face of the brand, and I am the CEO of this company, but I put the right people in place, like Nikki and like Warren, in this kind of chief role officers, chief C-suite position
Yeah.
to support me so that I can then go and create more. And that is getting my ego in check, because it's not easy to ask for help, to go, oh, I'm not actually that good at that bit. But these two people might be. And I think with therapy, it just helps you stop, think, and feel into really like, what purpose are you serving here? My therapist, John, he's just an amazing man. And he, we always just go back to, where are you in this and where's everybody else? And like, because what happens with someone like me, being a people pleaser, like, I get lost in a lot of things. And so he always says, where are you? Where are you in this? And that helps him kind of bring it back to me. So that was kind of a very convoluted answer, but
No.
therapy it's also, when you're running a company this size that's growing so quickly, like, it's also an hour a week for you, like, without anybody else. It's not about my kids, who take up so much headspace, right? They're amazing little beings, but children can be megalomaniacs. That's what they're supposed to be. And, it's not about that. It's not about my family or my employees or my customers. I spend most of my time thinking about those four people, right? My family, my customers, my kids, and my, I don't even know, whoever else, everybody else.
Employees. Yeah.
Employees, that's it. And that's a moment in time just for me. And we even, like, my partner and I go to couples therapy because it's a moment. We have 4 kids together. Like, it's an hour and a half. We do it like every other week, like, and we have a very good relationship, but we still do it because it's like,
Brilliant.
It just brings you back. And it's that moment without any of the other day-to-day activities that you can just sit and feel into what's really going on.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And you
Yeah,
said at the start of your answer, it's about combating the ego. And that's what it does, isn't it? Because therapy gets you into your feelings. You can't be in touch with your feelings in your body and in your ego at the same time. And
exactly.
you build that. My experience is, you build that muscle of just dropping into your body and your feelings.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And dropping into your body is such a good way of doing that. That's something that I've had to teach myself. Like, put your feet on the ground and, like, go back into your body and be present.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then the ego, takes a back seat, automatically, right? It
totally.
gets
And
you
look,
out of your thoughts
yeah,
and
we can't
evaluation.
vilify the ego, can we? Because the ego keeps us alive. Like, it
Mhm.
takes us out of danger, and it does a lot of really great things. But we don't need it to be running the show.
Right, we want it in the background. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, awesome. So leadership, we've touched a little bit on culture. I think that's something that leaders play a big role in. Obviously, is developing the culture. And
Yeah.
is there anything you've done with Sweet Bee Organics in terms of like ceremonies or routines or norms within the business that you think have really helped?
We used to do a ceremony when we first started, lighting a candle and setting an intention. We are so busy at the moment. What I like to do, what my staff do is they eat lunch together every day, and I love that. They come together and they eat lunch. There's always a meeting before they start the day to check in and see how people are doing. Unfortunately, I'm so busy I can't be privy to that every single day, but I love that they do that. From I think when I think about my staff and I'm looking out at them right now, we're just a really big family, and we support one another and what we want to do. And it's really interesting with the culture of this company. If you don't fit, you don't stay, and we don't even have to, like, fire you, right? It's
Right.
just a feeling, and it just, like, it's so great when someone comes in and you're like, oh, they'll be here for a long time. And they are. And
Yeah.
straight away. You just know straight away. Um, yeah. So I think there's an energetic feeling to Sweet Bee that you either get or you don't. And it works itself out culturally. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No. Well, it does make sense. Well, I think what you're tapping into here, and I think as a culture we don't have a lot of language for it, but yeah, you're tapped into your intuition. You're creating an energy field around you. You're
yeah,
attracting people into that field, and if their energy's
they-
off, they are going to bounce out. Uh, yeah, and I think just because of the nature of our society, we're a very materialistic society. We're a very intellectual society. So certainly in sort of the business context, we just don't have a lot of language for that, do we? But
yeah,
I understand you when you talk about that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it
Yeah,
works. Yeah, it's a great
yeah,
team. It's really a great team here. And that goes
awesome.
into our products. And I think that's why people love our products. Because like love, care, and attention. I mean, we do everything by hand, essentially. Like literally, we're
Mm,
pouring thousands of jars of Sweet Sleep a day. And that is, there's a lot of intention that goes into it. There's a lot of concentration as well, which if you've got great heart-centered people, that's pouring into the product.
yeah. And are
Like,
you familiar with the work of Veda Austin, the artist in New Zealand?
no,
No, so she's doing this work. I'm desperate to get her on the podcast, but she beams her intention into these petri dishes full of water, and she
I am
freezes the
aware.
water. Yeah,
Yes,
right. And then as it melts, you see different crystalline structures
it's incredible.
according to the intention she's put into the water.
And
And
it's
that's
the
just
same every time. It's
sorry?
amazing. It's the same every time. I've actually been a
Yeah,
part
that's
of
right.
the experiment doing that. And we did love and we really focused on love and they froze it and there was a literal heart in the middle of the crystal. Like
Yeah,
mind
awesome.
blowing. But
It is
that's it.
mind blowing. But I think what that demonstrates so clearly is what you're talking about, the intention and the energy of the people creating your products, that's going to flow straight into the product,
Right.
and the
Yeah,
person receiving the product is going to feel the benefit of that.
exactly.
And it is going to be different from somebody who's had their stuff packed by robots. Um,
Exactly.
well, I suppose. Well, now we get into another rabbit hole because, of course, there are now engineers who've managed to demonstrate how our intention can affect electronics. But that's
Maybe
another
the,
story.
the operator has really good intentions.
So
It's
the
simpler.
operator of the robots might make a difference. But yeah, but the context of the production of those products is going to matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you
yeah,
can feel
yeah.
it. You can feel it in the products. It's really interesting. And you can feel it when the product doesn't typically work well. Like it doesn't come together. Like the Sweet Sleep is really, really finicky. And if you've got someone that's like not really into it, like the batch doesn't work. So weird.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, that
Yeah.
would make sense according, if from an energetic perspective, that would make complete sense. If we believe that our intention can affect matter,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
then it does make
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah, and it's not weird.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Okay. Well, we've been going for for 80 minutes here. This has been just brilliant.
Uh,
Is there anything I haven't touched on in terms of your story, in terms of where you're at with Sweet Bee, your leadership, that you would have liked to have shared that you haven't had a chance to share?
no, I think we've had a real comprehensive journey through my life. Really.
Good.
And it's just, you know, look, at the end of the day, like I get to do what I love and I feel incredibly lucky to do that. And that's the message I always want to say I get a lot of questions about like, how did you do this? And it's like, just do what you love. Like it really will work out. Like, but you really need to figure out what you love. And I think that's the hardest part, especially with young people today. But yeah, I just feel really
So there's a
blessed.
good question, right? Okay, so everyone will say, "Yeah, okay, fine, Holly, but I don't know what I love." Like, what is your answer to that? How do people find what it is that they love?
I think a couple of things. They always say, go back to what you loved childhood. And what do you spend like when you're scrolling at night or whenever? Like what do you spend your time doing? Like I'm researching and I always have like supplements and plant matter and diet and all of those things, right? Like I've always been a complete research junkie when it comes to those things. And I still do that. And I think it's just like, look at what you're spending your time on. There will be hints. There's always hints. Always. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
For anybody who wants to check out Sweet Bee Organics, use Being Human 20 in your checkout, and you'll get 20% off. And we'll also put a link through as well. Well, anywhere else you would send people. So obviously we'll put the link to Sweet Bee Organics. Is, you know, in terms of anything else we've talked about, is there anywhere else you would send people?
You can follow, if you want to know more about kind of my personal stuff, because I can't really put that on our socials. That's at Everyday with Hollie on Instagram, and Hollie with an IE. And then, you can follow us on Instagram, which is always fun. You can see kind of the what we're doing here in the background, and all the craziness that goes on here. And yeah, that's sort of kind of the best places to find us, really.
Great. Okay, we'll put those links as well. Okay, thanks once again. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.